York Times, and also speaking about it in his position as chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and all of that at a time when the White House felt it was unable to say the things that Senator Kerry was saying. And indeed, President Mubarak did step down within hours of those comments from John Kerry. So now, today, Sunday, here in Washington, here he is on a major international television program saying that a no-fly zone can be implemented over Libya without a step over the line into unwanted military action, which, of course, is one of the concerns about setting up a no-fly zone in the first place. And these comments, Nick, put him directly at odds with the Defense Secretary, Robert Gates, who said pretty much the opposite last week. Here now is more of what Mr. Kerry had to say.
1. Prepare a no-fly zone in conjunction with our allies, not implement it. Certainly, first hope would be, if it were called on, to be done only in the context of international agreement and sanction. But right now, they don't want that, and I think that's good. The last thing we want to think about is any kind of military intervention, and I don't consider the fly zone stepping over that line. We don't want troops on the ground. They don't want troops on the ground. That would be counterproductive.
So that's a position here in Washington, John. What about this interim transitional council being declared by the opposition in Libya? They're calling for international recognition. Are they going to get it, do you think?
Well, here's the document that they put out, and I've been reading through it. I suppose it's about 8 or 9 paragraphs long, and I think that the only paragraph that is of real interest at this moment is the last paragraph, in which the Council says that, and this is an indication, I think, of how different the issue of a no-fly zone is seen within Libya compared to outside Libya, because the Transitional Council says, we request that the international community fulfill its obligations to protect the Libyan people from any further genocide or crimes against humanity, and this is the key bit, without any sort of military intervention on Libyan soil. So in other words, that is a plea, I think, for a no-fly zone, not taking into account any of the international concerns that are going on, which, as you know, is, will the international community be dragged into a wider conflict in Libya and in the region, and will we eventually end up with military boots on the ground from foreign countries when North Africa and the Middle East is an area where there are plenty already on the ground?
All right, John, the story rolls on. Thanks very much. Now, there's an embarrassment for Britain after several members of its special forces were captured by the opposition in eastern Libya. Let's get more on that from Felicity Barr, and she's in London. Felicity.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, there's been plenty of confusion and speculation surrounding this story, but it's now understood that the soldiers were with a British diplomatic mission, which was trying to make contact with the anti-Gaddafi forces. The 8 were detained, then released, and have now left Libya. Well, it was AlJazeera's Hoda Abdelhamid who first broke the news of their release, and she joins me now live from Benghazi. Hoda, talk us through, first of all, how these men were released, because, of course, you saw them leave the country, didn't you?
Yes, I did. They left the country at around 4 o'clock this afternoon, Libya time. They boarded the HMS Cumberland that had actually sailed in, docked for a few hours, picked them up, and immediately left afterwards. And now it will be very difficult to convince anyone here that these were people on a diplomatic, for the simple reason that the way they arrived into the country is raising many suspicion and has angered many people. They landed in the middle of the night with a helicopter. That was Friday, the night between Thursday and Friday, in a place called Suluk, about 50 kilometers south of Benghazi. They had equipment, they had maps. Some sources tell us they had explosives, even though we cannot double confirm that. But they did have a whole lot of equipment that rendered their mission quite suspicious from the beginning.
What have the Opposition National Council actually said about the claims that they were there to make contact with the rebel forces? Do they welcome that sort of contact?
Well, not at all. They said that they actually, the first time they heard about these people, the 8 British nationals, was when they got captured by the rebels, and when the rebels contacted here in Benghazi to tell them we have these 8 people. They said that if it was a real diplomatic mission, then why didn't they come into the country like everybody else did? That means through the border with Egypt. Why didn't they establish contact with the National Council before coming? They did underline the fact that there was an embassy in Tripoli and that embassy was still staffed. The embassy in Tripoli advised them that these people were coming. I did get a feeling really by speaking to the senior members of the National Council that actually no one really believed that these were people on a diplomatic mission, or that at least as it was, there was 1 diplomat and 7 people of his security details. They said that they didn't want to speak to these people, that anyone who wants to establish contact with the National Council, which should come into the country in a legitimate way, should establish contact before, and then they can have a discussion.
All right, Hoda Abdelhamid joining us live there from Benghazi. Thanks so much for that, Hoda. So what sort of reaction has there been in the UK? Well, Rory Challen sent us this update from outside the Prime Minister's office in Downing Street.
We've had a statement from William Hague, the Foreign Minister, given to AlJazeera, and I'll just read you a section of that statement now. He says, "I can confirm that a small British diplomatic team has been in Benghazi. The team went to Libya to initiate contacts with the opposition. They experienced difficulties, which have now been satisfactorily resolved, and they have now left Libya." So that does differ slightly from the accounts that Hoda was just relaying to us there. Now, William Hague went on to say that in conjunction with, or in consultation with, the opposition forces in the east of Libya, they would be sending another team. And he also reiterated his calls for Colonel Gaddafi to step down. Now, what this does, if you believe what the British government is saying here, is illustrate 2 points. It really illustrates, first of all, that there are immense efforts being made behind the scenes by governments to try and contact the opposition forces inside Libya, and it also shows the great difficulties that they have in doing so. Who is really in charge and how to talk to them? And we have seen from what's been going on over the last few days with the British government and its efforts that that can be very problematic indeed.
Well, I'm joined in the studio now by Syed Jabbar. He's a lawyer and analyst on North African affairs. Welcome to the programme. How likely do you think it is that Britain would actually send some sort of a diplomatic mission to Benghazi without actually contacting the authorities there first, as the National Opposition Council is claiming?
It looks bizarre because it could have obtained contact with the members of the Provisional Council easily. They have people who represent them here. And I honestly think that even the Council itself is not in control in terms of communication with their people on the ground. They are more occupied with how to deal with they are busy with dealing with Gaddafi's forces rather than the diplomatic front, the way it has been initiated by Britain. It is really mysterious. It could have been done in a better way.
So you're saying it's basically a bungled attempt. I mean, clearly, there was one person with a diplomatic passport. It's some sort of bungled attempt to make contact with those who are now running Benghazi, but the British didn't go about it the right way, because Britain is actually known for being quite good in diplomatic circles, and I mean, they've been used to doing this sort of thing in the past. Why would they bungle such an attempt?
I think the manner it was done is wrong.